Every top-notch coaching staff, every top-notch team in America, they have that guy. They have that ace recruiter who helps bring in the players to the team. You always hear that one guy mentioned on it. Frank Rockhouse of Orange Sports Channel on this Thursday afternoon. I want to talk about a guy we've seen mentioned for a couple years now. He's not one of your position coaches, so to speak, but he's a guy we always see come up in recruiting. We've seen him mention. Steve Wilfong had an article named him one of the most impactful 25 recruiters in college football last year. Coach Chop, old Coach Chop, Lavorn Harbin is this guy's name. So Lavorn Harbin, this guy I started looking on him because there's been numerous guys I've seen over the last few years since he's been here. It was said that James Pierce Jr., Coach Chop, was a big part of his recruitment. You look at other defensive guys, Jordan Ross last year. I've seen it mentioned this year with Marion Dye, with Christian Gass, just to name a few. Pretty much any of your main defensive guys, and especially your linemen, any guy's lineman, Coach Chop is mentioned. They talk about Christian Gass. Marion Dye talked about Coach Chop, said he was on me every day. Not really on him, but just making contact, letting him know that he's wanted. And just being, a lot of these guys have mentioned him as like a father figure to it. This dude, he is listed as, and I just wanted to pull up his experience. He's listed as a senior defensive analyst right now for Tennessee, but he works with the defensive line. It is believed that, if at some point that Rodney Garner does decide to retire, or, there was speculation, would he go back to Auburn this past offseason when Auburn apparently made contact, but he, fortunately stayed in Knoxville. But if Rodney Garner does decide it's time to either retire or move on, it's believed that Coach Chop will be the guy that comes in. So a little bit about him and who he is. So his experience, it ranges from, he started in 1999, defensive quality control at Auburn. So you got to think he and Coach Garner have made contact along the way. He was defensive line coach at Valdosta State in 2001, 2002. He was defensive line coach, special teams coordinator at Georgia Southern from 2002 to 2004. He was a pro scout / special teams quality control guy for the Atlanta Falcons in 2004, 2005. He was a defensive line coach at Tuskegee University in Alabama. And February 2013 through 2015. Here's where I think, based on what I'm seeing, that the Coach Garner stuff's coming in. He was the defensive assistant recruiting coordinator for defense, it says, for Auburn in 2013 to 2015. He was defensive line coach. He left in 2015 to go be the defensive line coach at Louisiana at Lafayette. And then he was there for right at 3 years. Then he went to Miles College, where he was the defensive line / assistant head coach. And then he went back to Auburn, director of recruiting, February 2019. And he came to Tennessee March of 2021. And he's been here for over 3 years at this point, defensive analyst stuff. So, a little bit about him as well. So, like I said, Steve Wilfong had an article talking about how he was one of the, we'll pull the article up. This was from Sports Illustrated, SI.com. This was back February 8, 2024. Evan Crowell had that. But Wilfong talked about, he said, gets plenty help from his coaching staff, talked about Tennessee, so which goes beyond position coaches. Wilfong said, reviewed the top recruiting aces for each top 25 signing class. He pointed out Lavorn Harbin for his efforts. He said, there isn't much better in the SEC than Tennessee's Lavorn Harbin, who was instrumental in the Vols number 13 class. 24/7 Sports number one edge Jordan Ross was a big one he was involved in. Max Thurman is huge for the Vols on the offensive side of the ball. Phone talks about. So, you get your guys on defense. Of course, Tim Banks, Willie Martinez. You've now got William Inge, Rodney Gardner, Mike Eckler. It's a pretty good recruiting staff that you have down here. And you have to give Brian Jean-Marie his credit. I still give him his credit. He took over a linebacking unit that was really depleted. They moved Jeremy Banks to line. He was converted running back to linebacker. Aaron Beasley bounced all over the place for a bit until he settled in at linebacker. I mean, you had guys who had been buried on other depth charts. You had, the departures of Henry Toa. You had Crouch departure from Jeremy Pruitt era. Just so much talent left under that program. And then these coaches, though, they've come in and they've helped replenish that. Um, I'm not a non-believer in Willie Martinez, but I do think it's time with him. It's kind of put up or shut up time. It's crap or get off the pot time with him. Tim Banks is a good recruiter. I think Tim Banks is a good defensive coordinator. There are times I question the game plan on it. Rodney Garner, we know Rodney Garner has been a top-notch recruiter for years. It goes back to he was very instrumental in that national championship team for Tennessee in '98. He was very instrumental as he was the offensive line coach back then, I believe it was, and very instrumental in a lot of those, specifically those Georgia guys who came in that were such a big part of that team. And then Mike Eckler, Mike Eckler's a wild man out here. Special teams, outside linebackers. And I was reading an article talking about him, and his confidence said borderline cockiness with his special teams. I love it. You need that swagger down here. But Lavorn Harbin, Coach Chop, again about him. Most of your defensive line guys and stuff, you're seeing that Coach Chop here. So it's a dude who's been around. He's not just he's not a grad assistant or anything like that. He is a guy with years of experience with defensive line and years of experience with handling recruiting as well. What a top-notch guy to have on your staff as just basically a quality control guy. I mean, you look on the offensive line side, offensive side, Glenn Ellerby. I mean, this guy's starting to come into his own recruiting, I think, at Tennessee. Kelsey Pope's doing a good job. Darrell Sims, I mean, the jury's going to be out on him. The tight ends coach, what was it, Alec Abam? I think, it's starting to come together with him as well. I mean, Joey Housel, I mean, what they're doing recruiting. But the unsung guys, we mentioned Harbin, and Wiltfong mentioned Max Thurman as unsung guys on the defensive and the offensive side of the ball. All your main guys get the credit. Some of these others don't. I've wondered for a while. I've always heard this or seen mentioned Coach Chop, old Coach Chop. These guys mention what Coach Chop does, how he's just a father figure, how he's reaching out, how he's letting them, know that they're wanted. But it's not all football. He doesn't pressure them. He talks life with them. And, that's where the father figure part comes in. I thought it made for an interesting topic today because I don't think a lot of people know in depth who he is. And I don't know that I fully know in depth who he is, but I do know that experience. I wanted to look in what's his track record up to this point. What has he brought to the table that's made him such a valuable asset to this football team? And, looking at with Rodney Garner, with Coach Chop, with their recruiting and what they've done, I don't think it's any coincidence that this is arguably the deepest defensive line in all of college football. Want to wrap up on that one. I put a video, if you're interested in memberships or Patreon, I put a video out just a little bit ago, just kind of detailing those. So if you see that join button, that's a little bit of what it does. It does go to help support the channel. And I'm contemplating a tier that I think would be really cool. And I've not put it in yet. You, the members that pay for that tier, I'll get you and we conduct videos together. We'll come up with a topic on it and just kind of have a round table, a StreamYard or Zoom, whatever round table where we'll discuss things over the years. What would have happened here? And so I think it would be a really cool tier. But, again, it'll be, I'll visit that later on with it. But I think it would be a lot of fun to get some of you guys, the listeners, you guys that support the channel. We just have a round table, talk about moments that, what ifs, what we would like to see. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Could do it for baseball, basketball, and football easily. But hope you have a great rest of the afternoon. Thumbs up, share, subscribe to the channel. If you want to say thanks, that super thanks at the bottom is greatly appreciated as well. Frank Rockhouse, Orange Sports Channel. Last but most certainly not least, go Vols.